Welcome to Profiles in Leadership. I'm Jack Myers. My guest is Gemma Atkinson, Global Chief People Officer for AMS. Gemma, welcome.
Thank you, Jack, for having me here today.
It's my pleasure. There's so many topics that I'm really interested in talking about. The role of leadership and the role of Chief People Officer as a leadership role within an organization, as you know better than most, is evolving and is being challenged in many organizations. I think the timing, Gem, is particularly relevant to have this conversation. But let's start with a little more about you, your background. I know you've been with Active International. You're headquartered in London. You have a global role. Active International, I think, is in 13 countries.
Yeah, that's correct.
And of course, the US being their major country, many people who I work with and who are viewers know Active International very well, but there are many who don't. You're a little bit of a hidden secret in some parts of the industry. Tell us about Active International and the work you do in particular.
Absolutely. As you say, Jack, I've been privileged to be with Active for over a decade and have done many roles within the organization, which we can come on to later. And I think Active is a wonderful business. It really is about unlocking potential and value and being in partnership with customers to deliver more. And I think we do that in a way that is consultative and future focused. And I'm really proud to be a part of that.
How do you describe it in that context, and how does Active continue to differentiate itself when the industry giants are fundamentally in both in partnership with you and in competition with you?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Jack. And I think I come from it as a global chief people officer by saying, well, I believe every business is people powered. And I think we have a core expertise in corporate trade or barter. We celebrated our 40th year last year. And what differentiates us is our ability to be both broad and deep. So across our countries globally, we have a real deep expertise in the media and marketing industry. And we ensure that that deep expertise allows us to connect with our customers and to understand their needs, their requirements. You said it earlier, that their challenges and provide opportunities for real meaningful value. So I think as the industry has evolved, we need to outpace how we evolve to make sure that we're ready for, not only the now, which we're very competent and very credible in, but also the next.
You mentioned outpacing the competition, outpacing the marketplace. Talk to me a bit about where you see the media industry as a whole today, with so many of your legacy clients being the broadcast television networks, the cable television networks, the more legacy side of the business. How do you see the industry as a whole today?
So I think our industry loves an acronym, Jack. So whether we use a business term such as VUCA or BANI, what they essentially mean is we're living in times that are very incomprehensible, very volatile, very ambiguous. And if you were to look at workplace trends for 2025 for the marketing and media industry, you would find concerns, opportunities, and challenges around privacy, around sustainability, around data integrity, around we cannot get away from it, artificial intelligence and automation. And all of these things are happening at a time which creates more complexity and a need for us all to constantly upskill and make decisions in times where we perhaps don't have all the information to hand because it is moving so fast. So I think when we look at those trends and we think about where the industry is going, I think it's really important that we are all curious and we're always looking up and out. And we're not looking up and out to necessarily, Jack, get all the answers. But what we need to be more comfortably uncomfortable with is knowing the right questions. So you're right, there are some legacy media vendors, clients that have done an amazing job over the last few decades in climate, but where we are now is very different to where we're going. And if you, I was recently reading a study, I think it was by Gartner, and they were saying that in terms of readiness of people looking at their organizations and saying, what do we need to do to change? 51% agreed that change is absolutely coming and we need to be ready. But only 21% of those people felt that they had the tools and the systems to change. So I think it's really important that we recognize that and start to think about processes and practices to get us ready.
Well, you're preaching to my choir. My new book, The Tao of Leadership in the AI Era, is about harmonizing technology and humanity. And
Yeah.
your focus, coming from a corporate operational background into people role at Active, positions you for that. What I'm concerned about are the 49 people who said change is not coming.
Yeah, so I think change is very interesting because I don't think it's about people saying that change isn't going to happen, but it's the velocity of the change, Jack. And I think automation, AI, technology, when you look at most CEOs today, there are two key things on their priority list. It's growth and it's technology and transformation. But the how is going to be different according to the industry you're in and your business objectives. So I think we're in a really interesting time at the moment where we are all prepared for change, but as human beings, we don't always like change. And I think it's interesting. We can often sit in a stage of kind of pre-contemplation and contemplation for change before we actually get to the change point. And it can be hard. And we know that, generally a third of people are right, off we go, I'm ready to change. A third of people sit in the middle and say, okay, if they're changing, I'm going along with them. And then a third of people are like, change isn't for me. And I'm oversimplifying there. So I think change is happening, but it's the pace of change. And I often think it's pretty much like our cell phones or our mobile phones. Often we are asked and nudged to upgrade to the next version, 11, 12, our operating systems. And I think we need to do the same with ourselves and with our businesses. We need to constantly now upgrade our operating systems. And that's not easy, Jack. And, if we think about our weeks and our days and our months, we're all pretty busy people doing the transactional, the tactical, getting our jobs done. And now we need to think about doing them in a very, very different way. So we're entering an era of extreme experimentation, I think.
Can you share some examples at Active of how you've responded in real time to marketplace needs?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm going to just take a step back, first of all, Jack, and talk about, in my role as a global chief people officer, what is important to me is having really strong foundations. So I think the first thing is for people to feel really rooted in the business, for the business to be really clear in terms of what is our direction of travel and where do we want to be, and making sure, and I think we're all in the communication industry, but I think the one lesson we all need to keep close to ourselves is the need to over communicate. So I think when you're building those foundations, it's really important that you build really great cultures, because I think the culture can be a competitive advantage. And I know this has been talked about for many years now. Nothing I'm talking about today is new, but building a culture in the way we work today, in the how we work today, and often with, we've got a multi-generational workplace now of 5 generations, and in the not too distant future, we'll have a 6th in Generation Alpha. The why. So I think there's much more commitment and ask of the purpose of work. And so I think building a really strong culture is extremely important. So we've always done that at Active, but over the last 2 or 3 years, we've really doubled down on that to make sure that we have clarity of communication, that we're committed to our people, and that we invest in our people. And going back to what I said about upgrading our operating systems, giving people the space and the time to upskill in the areas of automation and AI. I read an alarming statistic the other day, Jack, that said on average, and it was looking at organizations of, anything from 1,000 people to 100,000 people, But on average, an organization can have between 200 and 400 applications or platforms. So some of these to do kind of data, some of these to do financial, some of these to do strategic, whatever the mechanism is, we have adopted more and more platforms and systems in the ambition to be both more efficient and more effective. And I think there's a real distinction between the two of those. But in the pursuit of efficiency and effectiveness, we of course have adopted more tools and technology. But I think what's really interesting is the usability of these tools, applications, or platforms is not always optimized, because it's not about just launching something, it's about launching and learning. And we often go back to our comfort zone, which is known and certain, as opposed to unknown and uncertain. And so, you know, we are Active over the last couple of years, of course, have invested in more tools and technology. And it takes time, Jack, to rumble with them, to sit in that messy middle and experiment. And you start in a much slower pace before you become faster. So we did a hackathon last year. We experimented with some generative AI across our business. It was a global initiative. We got into teams. We looked at a business challenge or pain point, and we looked, how can Gen AI, particularly we were looking at Microsoft's Copilot, how can the use of that help with that particular challenge or business? And we made it into a bit of a competition, and everybody submitted their entries, and we had a criteria for kind of scoring and judging, because this is about in-time training. This is about, in our day-to-day, what is the one thing I can do today to make a better tomorrow? And you mentioned, you know, we are moving forward at such a pace with technology and transformation, but the human in that is still really important. So we need to invest the time in understanding how we can have augmented intelligence. So it's, you know, I believe it's EQ, IQ, CQ, AI.
So much to unpack there. That was really excellent and important. And just spinning out of the last couple of comments on the integration of technology into the day-to-day human roles and responsibilities. So much of augmented intelligence, AI, is going to be replacing human roles and
Yeah.
responsibilities. So how are you preparing your teams and your organizations for that reality?
So I think when I think about businesses and organizations, Jack, I think what we've all done incredibly well over the last few years is keep adding and adding and adding. But often it's important to take a pause and look at what you can subtract. So I think there's a huge opportunity with technology and the transformation it can make to ensure that those routine, repetitive tasks can be automated, to give us more space to think about what could be and what is and what
Hmm.
if. And I think if you ask most people in their given working weeks, we all know that we need to take that time to reflect, because I'm a big believer in data gives you insight, but only reflecting on the insight can lead to action. So I think data analysis for data paralysis gets us nowhere. It's got to be, I see this, and with this, let's look at some scenario planning and do this. So I think what automation gives us, Jack, is an ability to take a pause. And I think this is about creating new habits as well. I don't think this is something that we are necessarily as comfortable with doing as we need to be doing, to be thinking about, if we can find some time in our working weeks and our months, we can do things differently or better, because we've been able to automate some of those repetitive tasks.
You mentioned emotional intelligence, social intelligence, the roles of technology are not yet sentient.
No, no.
And so the human component still contributes creativity, intuition,
Yeah.
ingenuity. And core to that, it seems to me, is also the need for organizations and leaders to have empathy. And that's not necessarily a quality that's been an embedded part of corporate culture. How do you view those aspects? Talk a bit about uh, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and empathy.
So I think leadership is changing, Jack, and I think it's changing quite rapidly. And I think the most successful leaders are those that have an abundance of empathy. And when I think about emotional intelligence and empathy, I think it's self-awareness and social awareness. So one of the things we really pride ourselves on doing is investing in, and I'm sure many other companies do this, a real feedback culture. And if you were to ask me, is this a one and done, Jack? Absolutely not. This is a journey, and it's a progress and a muscle that we all need to flex and get better at by practice. But when we look, for example, at our check-ins every year, when we do our development reviews with our 500 plus people globally, one of the key factors in that is getting peer feedback. So I'll give you an overview of our process just very briefly. So one of the things we ask people alongside setting their goals is, could you go out and source your 3 Ps from some of your colleagues? So the first one is positive. What is my superpower and what do I do really well? And this should be the thing that's very visible to the people that work around you, and people seek you out for that superpower. The second one is, so it's positive. The second one is polish. What's the one thing that could be my superpower if I gave it more time and investment? And the last one, and this is very developmental, it's not a weakness, it's a strength-based overview. The last one is polish, positive, progress. So the last one being progress. What is perhaps the one thing that might hold me back on my blind spot? And I think this is the really important thing. And mostly I would presuppose, Jack, that we're all aware of what the one thing we need to work on is, so across the years, mine have been varied, but patience might be one of the things that I want to work at in the pursuit of getting something done. Have I taken that moment to make sure I've covered all perspectives, that I've sought out feedback, and that I'm not just rushing ahead with the way I see it, rather than it's the way we see it? So I think it's really important for leaders to get feedback on their style of leadership, but make sure that they do it with authenticity. And I know we talk about that a lot, but there is no one leadership style, but I think there are leadership practices. So the other one that I think is really important, Jack, is listening, active listening. I think we're all shockingly bad at listening. And I think it should be something we're taught at a very early age, because so often, Jack, and I include myself in this, we listen to respond versus listen to understand. And I think as leaders, we all need to be very mindful of listening to understand in order to respond with more clarity and more breadth. So I think leadership and empathy, it goes hand in hand, and the leaders of the future are going to be those with the ability to say, I don't know, but I'm going to pick a lane with all the information I have to hand, both from my deep expertise and from my use of technology, data, insight, and be able to course correct when the lane we've picked perhaps isn't the one that's going to get us to where we've got our aspirations or our ambitions.
In your 3 Ps, you added some additional alliteration. Let me add one more, and that's purpose. Where does
Yeah.
that fit into your model?
So I think no organization these days can dismiss purpose. I think it's called a lot of different things, your North Star, your aspirations, your ambitions. But if you take it down to a fundamental level, Jack, purpose is, what is the reason we are here and where are we going? And making sure that everybody in the organization, in whatever role they do, at whatever level they do, understands their contribution to the purpose.
And Gemma, as you look at Active International in particular, it is a technology-based company, and it's
Mm.
as you described earlier, it really fits into the economic models of many companies today, the fundamental business goals and objectives. Talk to us a bit about how you see that role evolving in the next several years, and where you see Active's role and participation in the broader global community, media and advertising and marketing community.
Yeah. So I would love to give you my crystal ball in 2026 to 2029. This is where I think our industry will be. I think there are so many unknowns and so much volatility. But what I do know is that we've got an industry of very convicted, compassionate, and energetic people willing to rumble with challenges and opportunities. So I think the best advice I can give to anybody in our industry is to constantly be looking up and out. There's a cliche that I often use, Jack, but your network is your net worth. And I think when I think of networking, I think of having lots of curious conversations. So I would encourage both everybody in our organization and anybody in organizations we work with to constantly be looking at the landscape and asking questions, because things are moving at such a pace, and I don't think we need to have deep expertise in everything, because that we don't have the bandwidth to do that. But we do need to have connected and curious conversations and be asking when we're not sure of something, and be asking when we want more information on something, and be surrounding ourselves with people that are looking for more and looking for different. So I think, one of the things that we do when we look to both recruit and retain our people is look for that mindset. So going back to something we talked about earlier, Jack, I think it's really easy to try and set many priorities in a year, and we all do that. But I think we need to set 3 to 5 priorities. And so if I think about for our organization what they are, I think the first one is be really intentional with culture. And when I think about that, I think about, attention energizes, but intention transforms. So be really clear with your culture. What are the values you hold dear? But more important than that, what are the behaviors that you are expecting and you are encouraging? So we co-crafted our values a couple of years ago for the next iteration of what our organization is going to look like. When you said, what does the future look like for you in your industry? And I'm really proud to share a couple of them with you today. So the first one is innovate and simplify. And I think that really cuts to the heart of technology and transformation. So we are all on the pursuit of innovation and creating new products and models and diversification, but it's got to come with a simplicity. So innovate and simplify, I think, is a really important one. And then the next one, Jack, is be a thinker and a doer. So I think that straddles both the ability to have big picture thinking and curiosity with the importance of execution. Because I think sometimes we can get too tied up in what could be and what can be, going back to the innovation piece, but 95% of strategy is the execution. And for all the changes that are going to happen in our industry in the next couple of years, we need to be able to say, this is where we're going, and this is what we're doing, and by when. We need to give ourselves really clear milestones, objectives, and all be really clear about that. And, as I said earlier, be able to pivot and course correct if there are factors outside of our control that mean that, we need to take a different decision at that point in time.
One more thing that I've seen you speak about is kindness, which is
Yeah,
a word you don't necessarily often see in business.
yeah. And I think it's a word, Jack, that I think we will see more frequently in business. So I think we're seeing a lot of thought leaders at the moment. We're seeing a lot of articles. We're seeing a different way of, for want of a better word, employee engagement that is around compassion and that is around whole person thinking. And I'm not that much a fan of balance. I'm not sure you can ever attain balance. I think you can find a rhythm. I think you can find a cadence. But when we show up at work every day, we show up as the personal and professional. Now, I'm not talking about somebody coming to work in their pajamas. But we should show up as who we are. And anybody that knows me, Jack, knows I'm a big fan of what I think is one of the most impressive business people I know, which is Dolly Parton. And she often says, or she has been known to say, find out who you are and do it on purpose.
Mhm.
But I think what underlies that is be kind. Treat people as you would like to be treated yourself, and always assume positive intent. And I think kindness in business is an amplifier and both a differentiator. And I don't say it just to kind of tick a list. I say it because I need to think about it as embodied in the DNA of the organization and one of our values.
Kindness is cool.
It is very cool. I agree. I agree.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and one that I really hope our audience spends some time with, because there's been a tremendous amount to unpack. Have we missed anything, Gemma, that's important that you want to share?
So I think the one thing that's important for all of us who live in these very complex, ambiguous times, Jack, is to recognize that there will always be more to do. But I think for sustainability, and I mean that in terms of how can we continue to perform at the top of our game individually and collectively, is it's consistency over intensity. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because nothing is ever going to slow down. So we need to have strategies for how we adopt the new technology, for how we work through transformation, for how we unlock growth in different areas. And I'm a great believer if we can do that consistently over time. One of my go-to books that I think I've gifted to so many people, Jack, is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And one of the premises is we do not rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. And so I think we need really good systems, and we need to recognize that a 1% improvement every day compounds over time, just like any good financial advisor would tell you. So if we can all get better 1% every single day, that's a 38% improvement over 365 days. So I think there are so many things for us to contend with. Let's all take a pause and think about consistency over intensity.
Deep breath,
Deep breath.
pause, listen, learn, act. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up one additional topic, and that topic is giraffes. Tell
Yeah.
me about your love of giraffes.
So this is a long-standing love with giraffes, Jack. I think, first of all, they are elegant, strong creatures, and they have the biggest hearts of all the kind of mammals. So I think that's a lesson to our kind is cool. They have very big hearts. But one of the books that most impressed me when I was kind of just starting out in my career, and I was really thinking about the importance of communication, was a book called Nonviolent Communication. And in that, there was a metaphor of two animals, the jackal and the giraffe. And so when we think of communication, going back to what we've talked about today, there's always going to be conflict. And I'm a great believer in conflict can lead to really good things when it's channeled in the right way. So good conflict breaks boundaries and augments business. But that relies on compassion, empathy, and giraffes with their long necks can look up and over the situation. They can see both perspectives and they can bring those together in harmony and moving forward. The other little animal in this metaphor is the jackal. And that's something in terms of communication styles that is aggressive and blaming and shaming and pointing at the finger. And I don't know about you, Jack, but we all have a tendency sometimes to be a little less giraffe and a little bit more jackal. I know I certainly have, and I'm not proud of that. But I don't think anybody gets to the end of a day and goes, I really showed my jackal side today. What a great day. So I think giraffes can teach us about what is really important. And if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, business is people powered, and being people powered is about having really clear and strong communication with our colleagues and our customers. We could all do with being a little bit more giraffe.
That's tough to follow, so we'll follow by just asking you, where can people learn more about Active International and about you?
Yep, so please go to our website, activeinternational.com. And if you would like to link in with me, I can be found at LinkedIn under Gemma.Atkinson. I would love to connect with like-minded people who pride themselves in kind of curiosity and change.
And you mentioned a couple of books and one that you've been sharing for many years. I hope in the future you'll share my new book, The Tao of Leadership. I'll be happy to send you a complimentary copy as thank you for spending time with me today on profiles in leadership.
Thank you very much, Jack. I look forward to reading it.
And I invite all of our viewers to visit legendsleaders.org and, of course, mediavillage.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on sharing thought leadership of our guests and through our self-publishing platform, which you can learn more about at mediavillage.org. Thank you for joining me, Gemma Atkinson, Chief Global People Officer for Active International. Thank you for joining me on Profiles in Leadership.
Thank you.